This video is a quick introduction to the proper positioning for an elbow radiograph in AP lateral internal and external oblique views. In order to successfully accomplish this radiograph, you're going to be utilizing a 10 by 12 image receptor in portrait mode placed on the tabletop 40 inches from the X-ray tube. Let's go ahead and have our instructors demonstrate how we will achieve each of these exposures, beginning with an AP view. Having the patient seated at the end of the table, you're going to place a lead apron upon their lap. You're going to have the patient extend their elbow, supinating their hand and aligning the arm and forearm with the long axis of the image receptor. Center the elbow joint to the center of the image receptor. You may ask the patient to lean laterally as needed to achieve a truly AP projection. Palpate the humeral epicondyles in order to ensure that they are parallel to the image receptor. You may collimate on all four sides in order to achieve proper imaging. The center ray should be perpendicular to the image receptor directed to the mid-elbow joint. Align the arm and forearm with the long axis of the image receptor and ensure that there is no angle on the tube. A letter marker should be placed medial to the body part within the light field. To achieve the exposure, instruct the patient to sit still and not move. While observing the patient, make sure that you achieve the exposure, and you may instruct the patient to relax. Now that you've achieved an AP view, you may progress to a lateral view of the elbow. The lateral view will remain with a 10 by 12 image receptor correctly placed upon the tabletop and maintaining the same source to image distance of 40 inches. Have the patient flex their elbow to a 90-degree angle, rotating their hand and wrist with a thumb up in order to achieve a truly lateral position. The inter-epicondylar plane should be perpendicular to the image receptor. The center ray should be perpendicular to the image receptor as well, directed to a point mid-elbow joint. No angulation of the tube should be taking place at this point, and a letter marker should be placed medial to the body part within the light field. In order to achieve this image, go ahead and instruct the patient to sit still and not move. Make this exposure while observing the patient. Once the exposure has been made, instruct the patient to relax, and you may go into the room and remove the cassette and go ahead and pass it through the processor to acquire the image. You should have done the same in the previous image. So between one image and the next, you want to make sure that you are taking the image receptor and processing it. Now that we have successfully achieved the lateral view of the elbow, we may go ahead and do an oblique view. This specific oblique view is called an external oblique view. In order to achieve this, you're going to have the patient supinate their hand and rotate laterally the entire arm so that the distal humerus and the anterior surface of the elbow joint are approximately 45 degrees to the image receptor. The patient must lean laterally for sufficient lateral rotation. Place the inter-epicondylar plane approximately 45 degrees to the image receptor. The center ray should be perpendicular to the image receptor, directed to the mid-elbow joint. No angulation of the tube should be taking place. The letter marker should be placed medial to the body part within the light field. In order to successfully achieve this image, instruct the patient to remain still and make the exposure while observing the patient. Once the exposure has been made, instruct the patient to relax. While you go in, remove the image receptor and process it. Now that we have done this oblique, we are now ready for the final image, which should be the elbow internal oblique. In order to achieve this, the patient should pronate the hand into a natural palm down position and rotate the arm as needed until the distal humerus and anterior surface of the elbow are rotated 45 degrees. This should place the intercondylar plane approximately 45 degrees to the image receptor. The center ray should be perpendicular to the image receptor, directed to the mid-elbow joint. No angulation of the tube should be taking place, and the arm should be aligned along with the forearm with the long axis of the image receptor. The letter marker should be placed medial to the body part within the light field. You should instruct the patient to sit still and not move while you observe the patient and take the exposure. Once the exposure has been made, you may tell the patient to relax while you remove the image receptor from the room and process it for image acquisition. Throughout all of these radiographs, being the AP, lateral, internal, and external oblique views, you will be utilizing the same size cassette, which should be a 10 by 12 image receptor. All of them should be tabletop, and all of them should have a 40-inch source to image distance. Now that we have seen how these radiographs take place, let's go ahead and observe what an ideal radiograph of these positions should look like. Here we have a truly AP position of the elbow. You should be able to have the elbow joint in the middle of the image receptor. In doing so, you should be able to see a humerus, distal humerus, the proximal radius, the proximal ulna. You should also be able to see the lateral epicondyle and the medial epicondyle. Between the two condyles, you should be able to see the olecranon process, under which you should be able to see the radial head and the ulnar head. In the lateral view of the elbow, you should be able to see, again, the epicondyles superimposed one above the other. You should be able to see the radial head, the proximal radial head, and the proximal ulna. The olecranon process should be right here, and you should be able to see the trochlear notch right here. External oblique of the elbow should demonstrate once again the humerus, the distal part of the humerus, and the proximal radial head and the ulna. You should be able to see this space between the capitulum and the radial head nice and open. On the internal, you should be able to see the distal humerus, the proximal ulna, and the proximal radius. You should also be able to see an olecranon process in the center of the image receptor, along with the trochlear notch and the medial epicondyle. The lateral epicondyle should not really be able to be seen as it's closer to this section, which is already superimposed by the humerus. This concludes the introduction to proper positioning for an elbow radiograph.